The lease was signed on a Tuesday, the 14th of March, 2023, under a sky that threatened rain but held back, just like my landlord, Mr. Silas Blackwood, would later hold back my sanity. I'd been living in a shoebox apartment in the East Village for years, cramped and overpriced, but this place, a slightly larger two-bedroom in a brownstone on Elm Street, felt like a dream. It had pre-war charm, exposed brick, and a rent that, while steep, I could manage. Part of the deal, hammered out with a handshake and a surprisingly firm grip from Silas, was a $3,000 security deposit, paid in full, 3 months in advance. I'd squirreled that money away, sacrificing Netflix binges and avocado toast, for this golden ticket to a nicer life. I remember the crispness of the bills, stacked neatly in an envelope, handing them over in his cramped, musty office above a laundromat. He'd given me a perfunctory receipt, a smudged ink signature on a crumpled piece of paper. Standard procedure, he'd grunted, not meeting my eyes. That should have been my first red flag, but I was too eager to move in, to escape the sticky linoleum and the communal bathroom of my old life. The first 6 months were idyllic. The apartment was everything I'd hoped for. I painted a feature wall in the living room a deep teal, hung plants in the window, and filled the shelves with books. I treated the place with the reverence of someone who'd finally found their sanctuary. I paid rent on time, every single month, often a day or two early. Mr. Blackwood, a man whose smile never quite reached his eyes and whose suit always seemed a size too small, would send terse emails acknowledging payment, never anything more. I'd see him occasionally in the hallway, a fleeting nod, a tight-lipped everything all right, followed by a quick retreat. He was a man of few words, which I initially mistook for professionalism. Then came the notice, tacked unceremoniously to my door in early September. My lease was up at the end of October, and the landlord was not renewing. No reason given. Just a stark, impersonal pronouncement. A knot of unease tightened in my stomach. I'd already started browsing for new places, but this felt sudden. I reached out to Silas, requesting a brief meeting to discuss the move-out process and, more importantly, the return of my $3,000 deposit. He agreed, grudgingly, to a phone call on a Thursday evening. The call was brief and brutal. Silas, his voice clipped and devoid of warmth, informed me that he was already aware of the condition of the apartment. He proceeded to list a litany of supposed damages: scratches on the hardwood floor, a chipped sink in the bathroom, a discoloration on the teal accent wall. My jaw went slack. The scratches? Barely visible, and I hadn't even owned a dog. The chipped sink? It had been like that when I moved in. I'd even pointed it out to him during the walkthrough, and he'd dismissed it. The discoloration on the wall? It was probably just a smudge from when I'd hung a picture, something easily wiped away. He then dropped the bombshell. My $3,000 deposit would be insufficient to cover the repairs. He was taking the whole thing. And, he added with a chilling finality, he might even be sending me a bill for the remainder. Betrayal washed over me, hot and sharp. This wasn't just a dispute over minor wear and tear, this was a calculated theft. He was trying to extort money from me, preying on the fact that I was a tenant, often at a disadvantage. I felt a surge of righteous fury, a cold, hard anger that eclipsed the initial shock. I tried to reason with him, to explain that these were fabricated damages, that I had photos from before and during my tenancy. He cut me off, his tone shifting from dismissive to menacing. The lease agreement, dear tenant, is quite clear. Damages will be deducted. I have witnesses who can attest to the state of the apartment upon your departure. And my word carries weight in this neighborhood. Witnesses. What witnesses? He was making it up as he went along. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking. He'd tried to break me, to intimidate me into silence. But he'd made a critical mistake. He'd underestimated my tenacity and my willingness to fight for what was rightfully mine. That night, I didn't sleep. I dug through boxes, retrieving every photo and video I'd taken of the apartment when I moved in. I had meticulous documentation, the slightly chipped sink, the existing scuffs on the baseboards, even a shot of the teal wall, pristine and untouched. I found the original lease, carefully tucked away, which stipulated how the security deposit should be handled, a detailed inventory of damages, itemized with costs, to be provided within a specific time frame. Silas had provided nothing but a phone call and a threat. The next day, I drafted a formal demand letter. I outlined the lease terms, the fabricated damages, and the fact that he had failed to provide any proper documentation for his claims. I included copies of my extensive photographic evidence. I sent it registered mail, the return receipt a small victory in itself. His response, predictably, was silence. A week later, I received a terse email from him, essentially reiterating his original claims and refusing any further discussion. That was it. The final nail in the coffin of amicable resolution. This was no longer about a few scratched floors, it was about principle. It was about not letting a scrupulous landlord get away with robbing an honest tenant. I spent the next few days researching tenant rights and small claims court. The process seemed daunting, but the alternative, letting Silas steal $3,000, was unbearable. I filed the paperwork in Manhattan Civil Court, listing Silas Blackwood as the defendant. I claimed not just the return of my $3,000 deposit, but also the statutory penalty for wrongful withholding of a security deposit, which in New York, can be double the deposit amount. That meant a potential $6,000 in penalties, on top of my original $3,000. I was aiming for $9,000. It felt audacious, but the law was on my side. The court date was set for November 15, 2023. The weeks leading up to it were a blur of anxiety and preparation. I organized my evidence meticulously, dated photos, copies of the lease, my demand letter, the registered mail receipt, and even printouts of my on-time rent payments. Silas Blackwood appeared in court, looking even more uncomfortable in his ill-fitting suit than I remembered. He tried to play the victim, claiming I had trashed the apartment and was being unreasonable. He brought a supposed witness, a shifty-looking man who stammered through his testimony, unable to provide specific details about the alleged damages. When it was my turn, I took a deep breath and walked the judge through the entire timeline. I presented my photos, calmly explaining each piece of evidence. I highlighted Silas's failure to follow proper legal procedures for withholding a security deposit. I pointed out the discrepancies in his claims and the lack of credible evidence. I looked Silas straight in the eye, my voice steady, and said, "Mr. Blackwood attempted to profit from my hard-earned money by fabricating damages and misrepresenting the state of the apartment. The evidence clearly shows otherwise." The judge, a sharp-eyed woman who exuded an aura of no-nonsense wisdom, listened intently. She examined my photographs, then Silas's flimsy documentation. After a brief deliberation, she delivered her verdict. She found in my favor on all counts. Silas Blackwood was ordered to return my $3,000 security deposit immediately. Furthermore, due to his willful and unlawful withholding of the deposit, he was ordered to pay me double the deposit amount, $6,000, as a penalty. The total judgment was $9,000. I walked out of that courtroom feeling a sense of vindication so profound it was almost dizzying. Silas, his face a mask of disbelief and fury, spluttered something about appealing, but the judge's finality silenced him. I received a certified check for the full $9,000 within 2 weeks. It wasn't just the money, it was the restoration of my dignity. It was the satisfaction of knowing that my pursuit of justice, even against someone who seemed so powerful and smug, had paid off. That extra $6,000? It became the down payment on a small condo, a place that was undeniably mine, a place where no landlord could ever try to pull a fast one on me again. The experience was a harsh lesson, a brutal awakening to the darker side of real estate, but it also taught me the power of documentation, perseverance, and the unwavering pursuit of what is rightfully yours. And for Silas Blackwood, I imagine that day in court, and the substantial financial hit that came with it, served as a rather expensive, and hopefully permanent, lesson in ethics.